United States and globally post-pandemic?
This is the beginning of the modern Cold War. And so it's America versus China, except that China is a much more worthy adversary for us than the USSR was at their peak. And the reason is because China has been making strategic investments for the last 30 years. The biggest thing that prevents China from really going guns blazing, broadside attack on the US is that the US dollar is still the reserve currency of the world. But even there, China, is trying to do a digital currency and a stable coin. And these are all these state-sponsored initiatives that come from, frankly, just strategic decision-making to try to usurp the United States as the most powerful country in the world. And so, again, it goes back to, is this a political issue, or is this an ideological issue, or is this an exceptionalism issue, or is this just a practical reality that we do not want another country being number one? And can we all agree? And if we can all agree, then I don't think they'll win.
Where do you sit on it? For you, is it practical? Is it ideological?
Completely practical. I have zero, I've been thinking about this a lot because I have not done any investments, and I just did my first.
Oh.
So it's been 3 months, and it was a credit deal, so it's not even equity. I was reflecting on what am I trying to do, because I felt myself frenetically, spending and working too much, and looking at all these different opportunities. And I realized, wait a minute, like, my job here is not to win some finite game. Like, this is not ending like a basketball game or a soccer match. This is like, I'm trying to be in this thing for 50 years. So my goal is to survive. And the reason why I say that is my ideology is very fluid. I have to be able to adapt to market conditions as they change, because if I want to be a relevant, person in the world in 50 years from now, first rule of business is don't go out of business. Second rule of business is don't forget rule number one.
Right.
So in that context, I think it's a very practical thing that we just have to deal with China and make sure that they do not usurp America's standing in the world as the most important country of the world.
For me, it's ideological. I just don't want a communist country.
I don't care about that.
That is torturing their citizens as the number one country in the world. I think Jason, it's extremely dangerous.
But I have a real issue with this. Like, I don't think you have the right to judge. Just like Californians can't judge Texans, and Texans can't judge Floridians.
Oh, no, you're wrong. You absolutely should judge people who are torturing people and not allowing people to have freedom of speech. You should judge them, actually. For human rights violations, I think you should judge people.
I think that there's a lot of that stuff in America that you stay silent on.
No, that's not true. I am absolutely for cannabis. Anybody who's arrested for cannabis violations and low-level drug things, I think they should be let out of jail, just like J.B. Pritzker did in Chicago. I mean, and I think the death penalty should be repealed here because we don't apply it properly. Those are the number 1 and 2 things, probably in the United States, that go against the human rights, the Declaration of Human Rights. And I'm actually very pro fixing those things. I was totally against waterboarding, and I think that was the worst moment in modern American history.
I honestly think that, like, China's going to do China, India is going to be India, and instead of getting caught up in our own ideology, you should change it in your own country, and then make sure that the other country doesn't win.
Well, and that's my point: is do you believe engagement with China leads them towards democracy and better human rights conditions for their citizens or not?
Again, and I think the fool's errand. That is an absolute.
Well, it worked for East Berlin, and it did work in saving Europe from the Nazis. So.
But the boundary conditions are entirely different, and China has proven that it works. Europeans were genetically bred to be lazy oligarchs. They just needed an excuse.
Okay, everybody. I think we just got kicked out of the iTunes.